Hello and welcome to the Center for Spiritually Integrated Arts, a Centers for Spiritual Living teaching center. I am Reverend Dr. Raymont Anderson. I am the founder and the spiritual director. Now, as you are sitting there joining us, you may have questions, any number of questions, such as, who am I? How did I get here? Spiritually integrated arts means what exactly? What is a teaching center? Well, what is Centers for Spiritual Living? What is that? What does that even mean? Or New Thought, or religious science, or science of mind and spirit? You may have any number of questions about this specific community, about the parent organization, CSL, our philosophy, our teaching, our liberation theology. Any number of questions. Feel free to send an email. We look forward to connecting more and building our virtual community, our global community. And if you haven't connected yet on social media, feel free to do so. This is your invitation now. Also, did you know that all of our Sunday messages are archived on our YouTube channel? You can watch it anytime. Now, questions about anything, such as becoming a member. What does that mean? What does membership entail? And if you live somewhere far and already belong to a spiritual community, can you be a member of more than one? The simple answer is yes, you can. Just like you can shop at more than one grocery store, you can attend or be a member of more than one gym. We are building beloved community. So you can do both. You can be a member of both. You can be involved with both. That's what being in spiritual community means. So we welcome you. We invite you. We are so appreciative that you have found this community and that you have joined us today. We bless you. We love you. We welcome you. Live long and prosper. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the rest of our Sunday message. Love you. Connect with you soon. Blessings. Namaste and greetings. We continue our conversation for September. The idea, the theme, pieces into peace. Today we are diving into the idea of oneness, or as the title implies, we are waking up to oneness. When we view the world through the lens of otherness or separation, pieces, in a non-life-affirming way, right? Because we can do this in ways that are life-affirming, which we'll talk about, and ways that are non-life-affirming. When we do it in non-life-affirming ways, it can be scary. It can be a place of anxiety and worry. We may not feel safe. And we feel like we need to defend ourselves, protect ourselves. Thus, we react, we respond with defensiveness, aggression, fear. But when we have a grand rising, intentionally waking up to a world of an awareness of oneness, peace, Namaste, in other words, oneness and the peace that comes with this oneness, and the peace that comes with this oneness as expressed in the phrase, in the action of Namaste. In other words, that which is the divine showing up in, through, and as me recognizes, honors, and celebrates itself, its divine magnificence, as you as well. Because there's only that which it is. So if it's incarnating in me, as me, with me, through me, and it's doing the same thing in, with, as, through you, then Namaste is the acknowledgement that even though there are two individualized expressions, there is still only oneness. And when we can do that, we move into a place of greater love, greater curiosity, greater collaboration, cooperation, compassion. We communicate in a completely different way. Our lives are changed in life-affirming ways for the better. And as a result, we experience a world that works for all, a world of peace, a world of love, a world of harmony, a world of unity. And we experience it now. Breathe. You know these folks? You may or may not, but they want to ask you something. When you see us, what comes to your mind? When you see these characters, what comes to your mind? What do these characters represent? What? No, that's not an envelope. Oh, he's always the, anyhow, move on. Green, what's up? We are many, we are one. Say what now? What, huh? Well, let's think about it. Let's dive a little deeper. We understand M&Ms, right? We know what these are. And even with the characterization of the previous slide, we understand what M&Ms are. But do we really? Because there's a spiritual lesson regarding M&Ms and who and what you are. Green, share with the folks what we're talking about. So when you think of M&Ms, if I were to ask you, describe what they are, what might you say? Any number of things, such as, well, M&Ms are candy. Is that accurate? Are M&Ms candy? Yes. Well, what about M&Ms are chocolate? Yes. So they're both of these? Yes. Well, it's also sugar. Well, yeah, that's an ingredient in it. So, we could say, yes, that's valid. We could say yes, sugar, they're sweet. Okay. What else? Any number of things. There are many ways that we could describe one simple M&M. Well, how is that any different representing an individual M&M is also the exact same thing that the collective M&Ms are. So the collective M&Ms, candy, chocolate, sugar, and more. The individual M&M, candy, sugar, chocolate, and more. Well, does it not work the same way with the divine? The divine as the absolute, as Dr. Holmes said, whatever is true about God is true about you. So in the absolute, if that which the absolute is love, and collectively all that God is love, then isn't the individualized expression of it the same as you? If you were an M&M, aren't you the same as the collective M&Ms? Because when I say the word M&M, M&Ms, you don't have them. They're like, it's a concept. And you understand the concept in terms of the absolute. And then you see an individual one in your hand, melts in your mouth, not in it. You see an individual one in your hand, and you understand that this thing in your hand that's getting ready to go in your mouth, you understand that this thing, this individual, tiny little, is also the same thing that all of them are. How is that any different than the divine, than God? Dr. Holmes says, you and I know that no matter how confused we are, you may remember this from last week. You and I know that no matter how confused we are, if we will get by ourselves long enough and think peace, we will become peaceful. Peace is the divine reality at the heart of God. Now, we are revisiting this specifically this week because we're going to do a remix this week. Breathe. And you and I are encouraged to know that no matter how confused you feel, how confused we feel, if you will get by yourself long enough, meaning the more you get to that place where you recognize your true self more consistently, the more you will automatically begin to think peace and become peaceful. Peace is the divine reality at the core of all that God is. Sometimes we are invited into a space of solitude where we can recollect, where we can remember the truth about ourselves. Sometimes we are invited to take a step outside of the confusion and get to that still point of knowing that who and what I am is an individualized expression of all that is, and that because that is the truth of my being, I have the ability to shift, evolve, and change. Are we willing to do that? There are so many people who are addicted to social media who get high off of the likes and the hearts and the various emoticons because those things validate them. The more followers means I'm validated. It means I'm popular. So without those things, you no longer are. For many people, they don't know who and what they are. If we're going to change the world, a world that works for all, then we have to understand what it means to live, move, and have our beingness from and as oneness. There's a television series that recently, first season just ended not too long ago, so I'm letting you know now. Spoiler alert's coming. So if you planned on watching this and you haven't done it yet, just so you know, spoiler alert's ahead. The Acolyte, in essence, and just briefly, the essence of the story is here are these two young women, and here's the spoiler. As the story unfolds, what we are told is that they aren't two separate beings. They are actually two expressions of one consciousness. Let that sink in. They appear as two separate individual young women, and yet what we are told that they actually are, they are one presence, one consciousness that was split. Because they grew up thinking they were twin sisters. And then they later find out that they're not actually sisters at all. They are the same being two separate individual expressions. So that which God is, that which Spirit is, one presence, one consciousness that is showing up as the multitude of all that is, including you. When we know our oneness with God and law, what a great burden is removed. Any sense of opposition is removed from the consciousness which precedes unity. Does it? Because I understand what Dr. Holmes is saying, which he goes on, peace comes from a sense of union with the whole. Confusion comes from a sense of separation. I understand what he's saying. And we're invited to take this to the next level, Science of Mind 4.0 that I often reference. Because let's go back a second. Even while knowing oneness with God as God and oneness with law as law, when there is opposition, right? Whatever that opposition is, racism, sexism, they are opposed to whatever this is. What this is inviting us into is saying, even though there is the expression of opposition, there is, back of all, unity. Right? So let's go back to the concept of the acolyte. Here are these two individuals, Osha and May. And they are opposed to each other for a variety of reasons in the story. Yes, they were twin sisters, but they represent, in essence, the dark side of the force and the light side of the force, and they show up in opposition to each other. But didn't you say that they were the same consciousness? They were one, yes. Which means, in the same way, there is one force that expresses as the dark side and expresses as the light side, but there is one force. And depending on your Jedi, you're showing up from the light side. Sith, you're showing up from the dark side. And those two energies are opposed. And yet, what we refer to as, or what George Lucas, what the canon of Star Wars has expressed is the gray Jedi, understanding that there is only one force, brings the dark and the light side together and they operate from that space. So there is no opposition. They're using the one power and the one presence called the force. So once again, we are invited to say that even though there is separation, they are opposed for whatever reason to drag queens, and they're showing up as separation, as animosity. Some show up with war, yes. But what we are invited to understand is that because there is oneness, because there is this power of love and compassion, etc., that we can actually heal this separation, dissolve it, and we're talking about non-life-affirming separation, dissolve it, which means we end war and racism and all of these other things, because we are then living, moving, and having our beingness from a completely different space, which is the space of love and compassion and oneness. We understand that that which is absolute wholeness is showing up as me, as them, as you, as all of us. And because of that, when we understand it, we can then connect from that space. So we don't have to have the confusion and the opposition and the antagonized feelings of separation and othering. We can actually move beyond that. Because when we understand that as an individual, you as an individual are made up of various things, same as we talk about the M&M. It's candy, it's chocolate, it's sweet, and more. You also have various intersectional ways of showing up. What is your race? What is your gender? How do these things overlap and affect who you are? If you are, for example, let's say you are a white woman, how does that impact how you move through the world? Suppose you are a white transgender woman. How does that impact how you show up in the world? Suppose you are a white transgender woman who is lesbian. How does that impact how you show up in the world? Now let's add citizenship. You're a white transgender woman who's lesbian, who has citizenship in South Africa or Russia or Canada. How does that, you get my meaning? Each of these things, now add ability. You are blind. How does that impact? See, each of these things changes, impacts, influences how we show up in the world. And yet you are still one whole being with various ways of intersecting and showing up the various nuances that make you you. And when we can really understand that for our individual selves, it's easier to understand it with others. So you then say, well, if this is how it's showing up for me, how does it show up for, assuming everything else is, okay, so I'm a white woman, you're a black woman. Where are we similar? Our gender is similar. So I have gender-related things that are very similar to your gender-related things in the realm of the toxic patriarchy. So where are we finding opposition? Race. My race as a white woman affords me a level of privilege in the culture and society we live in now, whereas yours, now that I understand that, it changes how I interact with you. It changes how I interact in the world, because then I can understand how the system oppresses you, oppresses us, based upon the same gender, oppresses us based upon the same socioeconomic, opposes us based upon the same sexual orientation. When we understand oneness about ourselves, we're not even talking about the oneness of God yet, but oneness regarding these things about ourselves, it opens us up to understanding and connecting with others through these same various lenses and perceptions and expressions. And the more we can do that, the more we are able to do that with the divine as well. So we are invited to really explore, especially when it comes to also things like implicit or explicit biases. How do these things impact and influence how we show up? Does it force us to show up? Well, I'm Christian, and my religion says that anything that's not Christian, specifically my brand of Christianity, is of the devil. Well, isn't that going to create opposition? Isn't that going to create separation? Isn't that going to create confusion and war? Because now our religious ideologies are in direct conflict and opposition, in the same way that sexual identity, class, and various other things show up in opposition. If we're not willing to, at the human level, we're not willing to really dive in and explore, do I have implicit biases related to ageism? Do I have implicit biases related to capitalism, classism, etc.? Because if I'm not willing to explore that for myself, then it's going to continue, it's going to continue to be an undercurrent in my conversations and in the ways that I show up, the ways that we interact in conversation, etc. And it's going to impact my understanding of that which God is, Namaste. The divine that I am, which is better than the divine that you are, sees itself but understands that this expression of it is better because I'm this gender and you're not. Because I make this amount of money and you don't. Because I have a house, a home, and you're unhoused. I don't understand why you don't just pick yourself up by your own bootstraps and change your thinking, change your world. You don't have implicit bias shows up in a little bit, so many different ways, and explicit, so many different ways. But the more we can navigate it at this level, the easier it is to then make the next connection to the all that is as the absolute. Now, if we did the same thing with Robin Williams that we did with the M&Ms, if I were to ask you, describe him, what words come to mind that describe him? And I don't mean, describing just the physical things that you see. I mean all of it. Describe Robin Williams. Any number of things come to mind. Well, he was an only child. He was experiencing early onset Parkinson's. He's a son, philanthropist, actor, and more. Far more than I could even list on the slide. And all of these things showed up in and as the one being called Robin Williams. So why is this any different than any of us? We are made up of layers upon layers upon layers of multi-dimensional, intersectional, metaphysical, psychological, emotional, and on and on and on. And when you collapse all of it, it's God expressing in, through, and as. Breathe. Man does not simply exist, but always decides what his existence will be, what he will become in the next moment. So, what Viktor Frankl is offering us into is the idea that there is a certain level of individual and collective opportunity to choose. We get to choose. So, alcoholic, yes, and you can choose to go to AA meetings and work on your sobriety and work on, okay, so I'm an ex-convict who recently got out of jail and I can't find a job. Yes, but you can work on what are you invited to work on to change regarding. Do you identify solely, remember that list of things? Do you identify solely with one thing above all else in the list of things that describe you? Are you so focused on, I am a sinner, I am broken, I am, rather than saying, wait a minute, that's in the grand book of all that I am, that's a page. Or it's addressed on several pages, but it's not the entirety of the book. So in each moment, we are invited to say, who and what do I choose to be, and what does that being inspire me to do in the world? In the film The Matrix, there's that scene where Neo is going to have conversation with the Oracle for her to tell him if he's the one or not or whatever. And she points out that above the door is Temet Noske, know thyself. Because when you know yourself, you are able to choose. And as Socrates said, to know thyself is the beginning of wisdom. And as we are reminded in the Judeo-Christian Gospels, physician, heal thyself. Metaphysician, heal thyself. Metaphysician, get to that space of knowing who and what you are, so that not only your individual life may be changed and transformed, but you are so powerful in that awareness that you are able to then participate in the collective evolution, to be a beneficial presence that creates and manifests a world that works for all. Socrates didn't say to know yourself is the beginning of knowledge or intelligence. He said wisdom. So knowing yourself, not just identifying with one thing. I am an actor. Yes, but you are far more than just that. What does it mean to be an actor, a father, a son, a brother, a teacher? What does it mean for all of these intersectional elements to come together? Recognized. That's wisdom. Because the more we know this about ourselves, the easier it is to know, the easier it is to be willing to know who someone else is, even beyond othering. I see you as another person, but I understand that that which is the all that is both of us and all. As Deepak Chopra says, at the deepest level, there is infinite peace, undisturbed by the play of opposites and the clash of darkness versus light. From the soul's perspective, there is only pure being. Yes. And let's explore a little deeper. From the soul's perspective, there is only pure being. However, our experience right now is not solely from that space of pure being. Because where we are right now in this physical, three-dimensional human experience of life itself, we experience grief and tragedy and sadness and horrors in many different ways. We experience it in many different ways when we are invited to sit back and look at our individual lives and say, I look at my life and where have I experienced grief and sadness, trauma and pain? Where do I feel the sense of separation, abandonment, loneliness, frustration, and more? Because if I'm unwilling to look at, because what we tend to do in New Thought is we want to jump over all of this straight to the space of pure being, and we want to kumbaya everything. There's only God, and God is all there is, and it's all good. It's all by divine plan, and it's all divinely purposeful, and yeah, I hear you. But that denies your humanness, which if you're denying your humanness, you're also denying your divinity, because they are not separate. They are the same thing. So our invitation is to ask, how does what is true at the level of the soul, pure being, change the pain, the grief, the fear, the trauma that someone experiences at the relative level of being? See, therein lies the question. We're not trying to jump over and get to. We're not jump over the yellow brick road and hurry up and get to Oz. We have to go through the entire path of follow the yellow brick road through the trees, follow the yellow brick road through the poppies, follow it all the way, step by step, brick by brick. So our invitation is, know what pure being represents. Peace. How do I bring that peace into this space of trauma? Harmony. How do I bring that into this space of sadness? Love and connection. How do I bring that to this space of my children don't speak to me, or I'm not really connected with my grandkids the way I wanted to be or thought I would be by moving to Delaware? How does any of this connect to these things? I am whole, perfect, and complete. Yeah, but you just had surgery a year and a half ago because diagnosed prostate cancer. If we're not willing to bring oneness into the individual expression, if we're not willing to bring it into our relative experience, then we are doing ourselves a disservice. We are cheating ourselves of our divinity. Because there's a full panorama of what we can experience. But when we try to shortcut it, we try to jump over. No one likes going through the painful stuff. But when we try to ignore it, we're actually causing it to get worse. Sweeping stuff under the rug, yeah, it's hidden there, but it's accumulating more dirt, more dust, more pollen, mold. So just because it's not visible to the naked eye, because you put it under the rug, under the sofa, doesn't mean it's not still there. Our invitation is, from the level of pure being, let's clean what's under the rug. Let's clean what's under the sofa. Let's eliminate the mold in the basement, behind the refrigerator, or where. Let's bring that which is the all that is into our regular everyday lives. Because when we do that, individually and collectively, there will be no more school shootings, no more mass shootings. There will be no more assassinations or assassination attempts. There will be no more need, ultimately, no more need for the fetishization of guns and many other things. As Nelson Mandela offers us, if you want to make peace with your enemy, you have to work with your enemy. And in so doing, they then become your partner. So we talked about the acolyte earlier, and this idea of enemy, this very iconic scene. If I were to ask you who this is, if you're a Star Wars individual, you know who it is. It's Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader. But Master Yoda asks us, when you see this, what is it that you see? Do you see good versus evil? Light versus dark? Father versus son? Do you see the force being restored to balance? Do you see redemption, forgiveness, love? Do you see healing? Because in the story, as it goes on, Luke says, your thoughts betray you, Father. I feel the good in you, the conflict. There is no conflict. They go on. The Emperor attacks Luke. Darth Vader tosses the Emperor down the thing and kills him. And then he says, I want to see you with my own eyes. Remove the helmet. Luke takes the helmet off, and Darth Vader, Anakin Skywalker, says, now go, my son, leave me. No, you're coming with me. I'm not leaving you. I must save you. You already have, Luke. You already saved me because you saw beyond the conflict. You saw beyond the illusion. You saw the truth of me, that there was good. You were right about me. And in that, the enemy became partner, became co-conspirator of the light side of the force, and rebalanced the force. Breathe. So, as if we haven't already entered into some uncomfortable territory, we're going to go even further, because our invitation is to do the same thing Luke did in the real world. See, it's easy to see redemption and forgiveness, love and harmony and healing when we're talking about works of fiction. It's not so easy to do that when we're talking about the same thing with real world circumstances and individuals. How do we see beyond the conflict within these individuals, recognizing that because God is all there is still good in them? There has to be. Because that which God is incarnating itself as them as well. So how do we, as individuals and as the collective, see the good in them to such a degree that we get there, that they understand it, that they then connect to it, and they are transformed, and they are no longer operating in the way that they are operating, no matter who they are, no matter where they are. How do we restore balance? Because as this says, fiction doesn't mean quote unquote false. We can bring lasting life affirming evolutionary changes to our real world as well. So police no longer shoot innocent individuals. There is no more racial profiling. That no matter what political affiliation, all of the partisan, all of the seats, regardless of which side of the house, regardless of where you sit, regardless of any of that, you are still operating based upon love and harmony, democracy and liberation. That there is no more cult-esque political, cult-esque theological, cult-esque, whatever, because we are moving into a space of being the healing presence. But we can only do that when we really understand oneness to such a degree that we operate from that space of oneness, so that the enemy, or the appearing enemy, the confusion of, but Reverend Ray, how am I supposed to make friends with someone in the Klan or a neo-Nazi? Or I'm not saying make friends with them. What I'm saying is, first, within your own being, understand that if there is no enemy within you, then the enemy outside of you cannot harm you. Now, yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. You're saying, yeah, but they can still shoot me. They can still breathe for a second. Breathe for a second and understand that what we are talking about is getting to the space where the enemy within doesn't exist first. Because for as long as the enemy exists within us, then they are the enemy, and we're going to treat them as such. What I'm saying is, when we remove the consciousness of enemy, oneness, love, harmony, it changes how we raise children, educate children. It changes how we teach the Bible or whatever we're teaching. It changes all of that to such a degree that then there is no more person desiring to shoot or hurt or harm or rape or anything, because we have worked on the healing processes for generations and generations and generations. We have entered a space of truly a grand rising and what it means to be a divine expression of oneness. Not just for ourselves individually, but collectively the world over. That's how we create a world that works for all. When we know what science of mind and spirit is, we practice it and live it as a way of life. We gain access to a way of living and being in the world that affords us greater peace, even amid the confusion and angst in the world. We are able to recognize things for what they are without the need to deny facts, while also making life-affirming, creative life-affirming choices. And when we align our mental equivalent with oneness as the truth of our being, we are more amicable to the process of healing individually and collectively. It is precisely because of our oneness and wholeness that we are able to evolve, to grow, to connect, cooperate, communicate, collaborate, and heal in community. Breathe. This week's affirmation, our declaration, I will say it first, and if it resonates with you, say it with me when I repeat it. That which is the divine as me recognizes and honors the same divine that is you. Together. That which is the divine as me recognizes and honors the same divine that is you. Breathe. So it is. This week's journal questions, or the Thursday night study questions. What is an old non-life affirming habit that I have that I would like to change? Ask yourself that. And how can today's message support me in this change? Number 2. When was a time I was in a situation with someone and I was able to practice pause, to choose a more peaceful response? And how did it feel to pause and choose a peaceful response? Number 3.
How does it feel to look into another person's eyes from the space of the energy of the meaning of Namaste? Which people are the hardest for me to see God? Ooh, ooh, got to breathe on that one, because you had the Klan up on a couple slides ago, and you had Hitler and dude from the Heritage Foundation. Man, you want me to see God as which people are the hardest for me to see God? What actually makes this challenging for me? Number 4. What would the world be like if everyone had a grand rising and lived from a place of oneness and peace? Or let's say, what would the world be like if the majority had a grand rising and lived from a place of oneness and peace? And then lastly, what is my invitation right now for me to live from a place of oneness and peace regarding real world issues and people and actions? Breathe as we enter into that space that we refer to as prayer, where we simply anchor and ground to that which is our wholeness, our perfection, and our completeness, the truth of our being. And it is in this space, in this energy of knowing this truth and living this truth, this place of being the divine expression of it, that we are and become a healing presence in the world. That no matter what it is we say, forgiveness. No matter what it is we do, love and compassion. No matter where we go, harmony and unity. That all of these things that are true about God, that are true about us, all of these things show up in, through, and as us. Wherever we are, whatever we're doing, God is expressing. And that we get to do this more consciously, more purposefully, more creatively in life-affirming ways, to such a degree that things like racism and sexism and ageism and all of the other non-life-affirming expressions fade into obscurity, that they become extinct, that they become likened unto illnesses and diseases that no longer impact humanity the way they once did, because medicine has evolved to such a degree that these things, they don't impact us in the same way. And that we take it a step further, that they don't even exist anymore. That the Tyrannosaurus Rex, yeah, the bones are in museums, and there are pictures and books of artist renderings of, and there are movies that, characterize and animation and CGI. We can move racism and sexism and all of the other things to that same space where they are now relegated to museums, to archaeological digs, but they are no longer living, moving, and breathing as the human experience. Because operating and being and living from that space of absolute oneness, knowing that there is no enemy within, there is only that which I understand to be God and love and joy and peace and peacefulness. There is only that. And because that is what I am choosing to be, it impacts what I do. And what I do changes the world. We get to, in this moment, choose that power and that presence. The law says yes. That means this lesson, this message, this energy, this oneness, this wholeness, it is already right here and right now for all who choose to embody it and be it and live it and speak it and breathe it and be breathed by it. The law says, yes, it's already done. It's already manifesting. It's already showing up moment by moment, breath by breath, word by word, prayer by prayer, action by action. That which is the Amen is the expression of our lives. That's what is so. And so it is. So it is. Many blessings, much appreciation. Be sure to double check in the chat if we are in fact having a Zoom fellowship meeting today or not. If so, I will see you there. If not, then I will see you during the week, Wednesday or Monday, Thursday, or next Sunday. Blessings and be well and know that you are loved.